that are coming here. So I really want to level set and explain exactly what's going on so that folks can understand why we were so urgently needing to meet today. I think we can go to the next slide. But actually, Chris, can you go back? I'm so sorry. Just to make sure everyone is aware, we do have representatives who are going to be discussing the shelter specifics as well as what happens when folks arrive. And then I'm tasked with explaining exactly why folks are getting here. So we can go to the next slide, Chris. Thank you. So I just want to bring folks back and really level set. So on August 30th of this past year, we received the first 2 buses that came from Texas. In early summer or midsummer, really, we saw that there were buses from Texas being bused to New York and DC at a rate and a sort of campaign that no one really knew what to do. And certainly those cities were caught unawares about how to support hundreds and thousands of people arriving suddenly. We did not know if Chicago was going to be targeted, but we thought as a sanctuary city, as a welcoming city, that we should sort of start having these conversations. So we did have a few light conversations, but again, it was this very unknown, would this happen? Will this happen? What would we do if suddenly hundreds of people came to the city? On August 30th, when we got the intel that the bus was coming, we had about 24 hours to structure an emergency shelter because by then we knew that folks were arriving. And the first few buses had about 100 people. Structuring a shelter without any knowledge about who was coming, how many, what their needs were going to be was certainly challenging. And it sort of became the pattern that we did see. What I really want to emphasize here is that Texas does not provide any information to the city about when they are sending a bus. They do not let us know that they're sending buses or how many. Not for lack of our trying, we have certainly urged the Texas governors to help and to cooperate with us to let us know, but this is part of the plan. The goal of this is to really to help to create a destabilization of sanctuary cities. And so that's what we saw in New York and DC, and that's what was happening here. They began to send buses and they refused to tell us what's happening. So because of that, about 3 weeks later, El Paso, independently of Greg Abbott, started to send buses on their own. And at that time, the pace started at a much faster rate. And so what we ended up seeing was with El Paso, we started seeing from 1 to 2 buses every week to 1 to 2 to sometimes 5 buses every day. And we didn't know how many people were going to be on the buses. We didn't know what their needs were going to be. We had people who were in active labor. We had people who had medical needs, who had walked thousands of miles. We had people who didn't even want to be here in the city. They were just sort of bused here. And we really had to help sort of corral and figure out what was happening. And so I want to emphasize, because of this sort of pace and lack of awareness, we obviously started working very closely with the state. We worked very closely with the county to sort of figure out what our processes were going to be. But because we didn't know from one day to the next if we were going to get 1 bus or 0 or 5, we really sort of started piecemealing here in the city our shelter spaces. And later on, there's going to be a slide that shows where our shelters are located. And that's something that we had to do. And so because of that, 1 second. Yes, go ahead.
I just want to make sure that we still have people that can't get in on Zoom. Please have them, don't register on Eventbrite if they're trying to get on Zoom. You have to register through Zoom and the link will be sent to you. So if they registered on Eventbrite, they will not be able to see this meeting on Zoom.
Right, there's a link on the Eventbrite for the Zoom. So folks can just look at that in the details and that can get to the Zoom link. Okay, thank you. So we started working with the state and with the county. Again, we're piecemealing our shelter spaces simply because we also don't want to overwhelm the systems that we have in place for our current population that's here. And so that's one of the reasons why we're also sort of creating these ad hoc shelters, because we have, again, this pace of buses that are really unknown. And so you might remember that in mid-October, we started to have this conversation about where we're going to place folks. And we had this conversation about Wadsworth. And then suddenly the conversation stopped. And I want to clear up the reason behind that. 3 things happened, right? The first was that El Paso on their own decided they were going to stop sending buses. They called us up one day out of the blue and said, we're not sending buses anymore. Now, Greg Abbott through Del Rio and Eagle Pass continued to send buses, but El Paso, who was sending them every day, ceased to do so. And so suddenly that urgent need of housing hundreds of people a day stopped. The second thing that happened is that around the same time, the Department of Homeland Security issued a new program. It's a program to help Venezuelans enter the country through a private sponsor. So what we were seeing, this flow of folks that were coming through the southern border, the vast majority at that time this past summer and late and early fall were from Venezuela, that we were seeing arrive via buses. They were also from South and Central America. And so because of that, demographic number, the Department of Homeland Security created this program to help Venezuelans enter the country through another means. And because of that, we did see a drastic drop of Venezuelans entering through the southern border. Now, here's where I need to stop and emphasize that though we are seeing people on buses from South and Central America, those are not the only people arriving at the southern border. And we have seen people who we are able to support and need to support even more, who are not coming from the buses, who are not South and Central Americans. We are seeing Caribbeans, we are seeing Haitians, we are seeing folks from different African countries also arriving through the southern border that we need to be responsive and receptive to. But because of that program specifically for Venezuelans, we did see a drop of entries, and that helped stem some of the buses. And finally, the third thing that happened around October was the potential rescindment of Title 42. So Title 42 is a program that was established by the past presidential administration that said because of COVID, folks who wanted to come into the country and apply for asylum had to stay outside of the country. Biden administration said there is no real medical reason or a policy we want to abide by, and so we're going to rescind that program. And so we believe that on December 21st, which was sort of like our D-Day, we realized that that Title 42 was going to be rescinded. And so in response and in anger, we were likely going to see an increase of buses from the Texas government. And so we started working and getting together with folks to figure out how we were going to be responsive if we did see an increase of buses again. Now, of course, there is litigation. And so at the moment, it's up with the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has put a stay on rescinding Title 42. And so what that means is we don't know what's going to happen to that program. And so if that program is eventually rescinded, it is very likely that the Texas government is going to respond negatively again by trying to send people to try to prove their point and sending them to more and more sanctuary cities. And so one of the reasons we wanted to meet with you and had to have this meeting this week is because we do have shelters that need to be decompressed because of the urgency and the way that certain shelters were piecemealed. We do have this idea that potentially Title 42 could create an impetus of seeing more and more buses, and we don't necessarily want to sit and wait to see what happens. We want to be proactive. And I know our colleagues will discuss a little bit more about why Wadsworth, why that seems to be the approach we were wanting to take at the moment. But I think it's very important that folks understand that this is an incredibly fluid situation. We do not know if and when a bus is going to arrive. We do not know how many are going to come, and it's not for lack of wanting to know. It's simply the goal of the Texas government to not let us know. And so for the folks that are here, I do want to emphasize the ones who have been here. We have received about 3,800 people via buses and about 1,300 more that have arrived in other ways who have needed some form of support, who are also asylum seekers. These folks that are here are in a very precarious situation because they also need certain benefits and support systems that we as a city do not have the ability to provide. Only the federal government can decide if someone can get a work permit. Only the federal government can decide if someone gets stable status. And so we do not have the ability to say, you have to go work, or you now can be here free and clear. We're certainly trying to figure out solutions to support people. We'll discuss some of those support systems, but a lot of this, sort of the next steps and how folks get stabilized, is a lot of it is out of our hands and really depends on a federal government response. And so we often discuss, and Mayor Lightfoot has discussed, that this is really a time for federal leaders and state and local leaders to be collaborative, because that's really going to be the solution to help folks become stable here in the United States and in our city. But at the moment, I'll leave it at that. And so I'm going to move on for my colleagues to go ahead and talk about what the actual situation is when folks arrive, and then discuss the shelter itself. I think next slide, Chris, sorry.
Audio check. Audio check. Stand by for a second. Audio check.
No, there you go.
A little better, a little better. Check 1, 2. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to talk a little bit about our process thus far since our first bus arrived back on August 31st, and take a look at some of our current sheltering options here in the city, and also why Wadsworth is such an attractive option to us. So if you'll see by the slide here, thankfully, one consistent option that's occurred since this mission began is the drop-off location for each of these buses. 99% of our buses have all been dropped off at the same location, which is Union Station. So at least we have some reliability there. While Nubia mentioned we don't really have a communication path with the state of Texas, thankfully, we've been able to establish some communication lines with the charter bus company, as well as some non-governmental organizations down at the border who have kind of given us a heads up when they know something is about to start heading north. So typically we'll know about 22 hours in advance if one or more buses are starting to come. And that allows us at least a little bit of prep time and allows us to stage assets at Union Station. So it's a long trip from the border, typically 24 or so hours. So our first priority is to get these people to a shelter. And often we find ourselves scrambling at the last minute to find out exactly where we're going to put these folks. Particularly, we want to make sure that we're separating families with children from other passengers as well. So we want to get a roof over their head, a safe place to sleep. Obviously, we want to get them fed. So we've been able to provide feeding services either through Salvation Army or through a contracted caterer, sometimes a combination of both. We want to make sure that they have access to a shower and general hygiene supplies at the shelter. And we're also going to undergo some just initial triage medical screening to determine whether there's a need for further medical response at that time. Although that's not our full medical screening, just an initial triage. Okay, so typically within the next few days, depending on when they arrive, they're going to go to 2 locations. The first is the MARC, which stands for Multi-Agency. It says Response Center. It's actually Resource Center. This is typically an operation that we will set up when there is a need for long-term recovery and social services. I believe the last time we did a full one here in Chicago was shortly after Hurricane Maria, when we had a lot of impacted Puerto Rican populations coming up to Humboldt Park. So we've established our current MARC is taking place at Arturo Velasquez Institute on Southwestern Avenue. So right now it's open once a week, every Wednesday. And that is our opportunity to set up a transportation network to get these people in there, to start having conversations with our Catholic Charities partners about potential out migration if they have a want or need to get to another location outside of Chicago, and we can help finance that. There's legal services that they can be attended to with our clients. We have done donation handouts at the MARC in the past, although most of those probably take place at the individual shelters these days. A lot of our MARC events also are co-located with city key ID events. So this is our opportunity for our clients to get a government issued ID that they can use from everything from a library card to a CTA Ventura pass. It also serves as a prescription discount ID card. So very handy. If they are determined eligible for certain state benefits, they can also enroll in those to be served by Illinois Department of Human Services. Okay, so that's, they'll usually spend several hours there, get transported back to their respective shelters. At some point in the next day or two, they'll likely go to our health screening, which is currently taking place at a Cook County Health Clinic in the Belmont-Cragen neighborhood. There they'll have access to get prescriptions for medications, vaccinations if needed. If they need any referrals or follow-up care to another physician, they can get it there. And physicals for school-age children as they're eligible. And that's another thing we've been trying as best we can to get a lot of our children integrated into CPS schools. I believe we're at over 200 children that have currently in CPS schools now. Next slide.
They're on Zoom asking for everyone to introduce
Oh,
themselves.
sure. My name is Matt Dowdy. I'm a manager of emergency management services at the City of Chicago Office of Emergency Management and Communications. That's a mouthful. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so here's a current look at our current sheltering situation, which changes from week to week depending on what our availability is and the number of clients. But this is a good way to see, get a view of what's going on throughout the city. So we have a pretty geographically diverse set of shelters that we've established ever since August 31st. That we currently have 11 in the city. And they can range anywhere from 95th and Harvard at a church that we've teamed up with there, all the way to Western and Tui, where we've worked with a decommissioned YMCA to take in clients there. So they're spread out really all over the city. If you look closely at the vacancies column and the capacity column, you'll notice that just about every single one of our shelters are either at or near capacity. And I won't lie, it's a struggle some days to figure out, okay, we know a bus is coming in 22 hours. Where are we going to put some of these people? We don't always have an answer right away. And it's just through the collaboration of the people up here and all of our associates that we're usually able to figure out a solution before the bus arrives. Some of these shelters are even over capacity. So we're really stretching the limits of what they can handle right now. So as you can see, currently we have an occupied bed count of 1,536 people, clients. And really the capacity is 1,464. So we're over capacity overall. You know, and as was mentioned previously, we're seeing a steady number of walk-in clients that are somehow able to get here to Chicago on their own. It's not uncommon for them to come up to the shelter themselves. And our policy states that we must call 311 for them to get processed into the system. Sometimes they'll end up staying at the shelter they showed up at. Other times we'll have to relocate them to a different shelter. Okay, next slide. All right, which brings us to Wadsworth and what we're looking for as far as next steps. So it's been our desire ever since this operation started to try to decompress some of these smaller shelters that you just saw and try to open up a series of larger shelters. And I won't lie, it's been a little bit challenging. Ideally, we'd want a facility space that's over 100,000 square feet. We want to make sure it's got obviously sufficient restrooms, sufficient showers, and if it doesn't have showers, the ability to hook up a shower trailer, which we've done in the past and we're currently doing at other shelters. We want to make sure it's got ample parking. Ideally, we want a communal area for eating or just general gathering of our clients. We want this to be a hospitable location for them. And we want the ability to either have washers and dryers there so we can do laundry, or we can at least set up a laundry service where they can pick up and drop off laundry. There's a lot that goes into activating a new shelter, including a lot of logistics. So this brings us to Wadsworth and why it's so attractive. Number one, we're likely putting single adults or families without children. That is our plan for this facility. We will likely not have families with children. It's obviously very important that we maintain the separation of those units. It's a big facility. It's a decommissioned CPS school. And thankfully, a lot of work has been done on it in recent months through both our partners at AIS and Chicago Public Schools. So we've done everything from installing toilets to elevator repair, furnace and heater repairs, to just general facility cleaning. We've looked at dozens of other facilities across the city and the suburbs, and I've noticed a common theme on just about every other facility, large facility that we've looked at. Either it's going to cost a lot of money to either purchase or lease, or the facility is going to require a lot of repairs and work. For instance, a lot of these other decommissioned CPS schools, the copper has been stripped. Some of them have had asbestos and lead paint issues. Obviously, they're not anywhere close to being ready to go. It would take months and a lot of money to prepare those facilities to make them shelter ready. But thankfully, that is not the case with Wadsworth. We've got a great semi-congregate setup. We've got multiple floors where if we needed to, we could separate out perhaps single men from single women. We've got that communal space that I spoke about, a nice large cafeteria area. We do have the ability to bring in a shower trailer to hook around back, so we can make sure that all of our clients can have access to showers. So we've been doing work there, which is great. Right now, as it stands, our ideal target start date there is January 6th, 2023. So that's coming up fairly soon. And we do really have a need for this location due to all the issues that we stated before. Our current shelters are at capacity. We have a need to decompress some of them. It's still uncertain what's going to happen, even with this little break that we got with the Title 42 ruling yesterday. We still could see more buses come in from the state of Texas and or El Paso. So our proposed start for this facility is to start with 145 residents that we would decompress from some of those other shelters that you saw earlier. Depending on the need, like we said, it's a very fluid situation. We might eventually be taking people directly from the buses at Union Station and bringing them to Wadsworth. We don't want to fill the place to capacity right off the bat, which is why we're starting off with a relatively low number. But as time goes on, and it depends on what our need is, we're probably going to bulk up that number depending just on what our needs are on any given day. So that is an overview of why we find Wadsworth such an appealing option for sheltering.
Next slide. Good evening. I'm Brandy Kanazi, Commissioner for the Department of Family and Support Services. First, I just want to thank you all for being here on a Wednesday cold night to set the table for what Matt and Nubia have said. This is a humanitarian crisis. This is something in terms of social services that we've done for the city. This is unlike anything we have ever done. At the height of the mission, we were seeing 5 buses a day. Each bus has 50 people on there. To Matt's point, when people are coming, these are people, these are individuals. My parents are from Central America, so this is very personal for me. To see children who get off the bus, who are dehydrated, who have not been fed, that is real. And so our mission at DFSS is we support Chicago's vulnerable residents, no matter what. We go to work in the cold. We go to work for people who don't have resources and a voice. And so this is why we're here. In terms of the basic needs that we do, we provide a cot, a blanket, and a pillow, a place for people to sleep. We provide shelter. Individuals receive 3 meals a day. We make sure that they eat, as well as showers and towels. A lot of people, when they get off the bus, they don't know where they are. They don't know where they've been sent. So we first have to educate them about welcome to Chicago. From there, we look to see if you're in a t-shirt. A lot of people come up to me when we greet buses and they do this, meaning they haven't showered in days. And so we make sure people get a hot shower because that gives people back their dignity. We give them underwear and a change of clothing. I think that's just really important as we think about what would we want someone to do for us if we were in that position. To Matt's point, we also have laundry facilities and we provide PPE. We want people to have the basic necessities. From there, in our shelter system, we have case managers and residential aides. They're responsible for really making sure we're addressing people's needs. About 15 to 20% of the people who get off the bus determine that Chicago is not their last destination. This is only a stop in their journey. And so if they have family in other cities across the US, we will connect them and help them get there. If people decide, you know what, I got on the bus, I chose Chicago off of one dot on the map because I had two options, so here I am, we help them figure out, okay, what's next? And that could be understanding their legal services. We make sure people understand if you've been given a court date, what does that mean? If you have family in other cities, which happens, we try to reunify people because we know they had a plan when they left their home country to set the table for everybody. And when folks are coming from Venezuela, they are walking thousands of miles. Part of that journey takes over a month to 6 weeks. And so when they get here, folks are exhausted. They've got a lot of foot wounds. And so the other thing we do, which is for all of our shelters, is we make sure that every shelter has a healthcare partner. They're able to address people's not only physical needs, but as well as their behavioral health needs. When you're traveling through the Darien Gap, what we've heard is that is probably one of the toughest parts. There are a lot of people who are out to, make sure that they don't succeed. And so they're robbed. People can be sexually assaulted. And that's just a lot of trauma. And it must be really bad to think about. You would risk your life and that of your children to get here for a better life. So I just want everyone to understand that people aren't leaving just because it's a joyride. They're leaving out of necessity because they don't see another way. The other thing that we've done for individuals that have settled here, for families, we've made sure that we've helped connect with the Illinois State Board of Education. So anyone that wants to learn English as a second language, we help provide that. We are helping enroll children in school, not only our pre-K, but also our CPS students. And so that's just been really important. And then the last part is the know your rights, right? As Nubia said, part of coming when you're an asylum seeker, you're not allowed to work. And so people can be taken advantage of because everyone wants to feed their family. Folks have paid thousands of dollars to get here. They owe money to individuals back in their home country. And so they've got to repay that debt. And we make sure that they understand here's how you're not taken advantage of, not only on the basic level, but also on the legal aspect. And then last part of the city's plan is transition, right? When you think about our shelter system, at DFSS, we support over 50 shelters across the city, over 3,000 beds outside of the migrant issue and the new arrival issue. So our regular homeless system, we support 3,000 beds with over 50 shelters. And so housing is on everyone's journey. And so we're working to make sure with the state of Illinois and our partners at the city that we're able to help people see housing as their last transition as they make their way into transitioning into Chicago. Next slide, please. And so what can you expect at a shelter? And what are the rules? I will say that the rules are the same at any shelter we run, whether it's a new arrival shelter or our regular homeless shelter system. We make sure that residents sign a copy of the program rules and expectations. We do an orientation for our new arrivals in Spanish, and they sign a copy. We have residential aides, we have case managers, we have program directors that are there to make sure people are following the rules. Part of that means that, they have to sign in and out. We have to know who's in our building, not only for staff safety, but also for their safety. There's a curfew. People have to be in at 11 o'clock unless they have a job. And we can talk about how people are able to do that when you heard us say that they're not able to work. The other thing may be they cannot have visitors. So if they've got family in the community, you can go to your family's home, but your family can't visit you in the shelter. We really like to keep a tight ship and make sure that there's protection and know who's in the building. There's no drugs, there's no drinking, there's no alcohol in the facility. There are no weapons, there's no knives. If we have an issue, we work with CPD to make sure that we have conversations and people are treated as any other resident of Chicago when it comes to you cannot do illegal things in our shelters. They must respect the property and the community. And we have conversations in residential aid meetings. There's house meetings like we do at our shelters to talk about if we see a problem, what's going on? Maybe let's understand there may be cultural differences. Let's say, this is what you do. This is what we don't do in Chicago. We don't hang out outside. And so we have to also remember that people are not in their native country and they have to learn our customs and traditions. And so we also try to make sure that we educate on what we can expect and how to be a good neighbor and community member. Smoking is not permitted in any of our shelters. And then residents may be discharged for the rules. That's just really important, right? If they're a threat to any of the residents, that's just not safe for us. And so if someone is discharged, they could be banned from being in any of our shelters, and whatever consequences they may face legally, they are on their own for that. And we make sure we tell people, right, we cannot protect you if you don't obey the rules. That's just really important to us. Next slide, please. And so what supports are in place to keep residents and the community safe, right? I will tell you that one of the things that we learned during COVID is that large congregate settings like this one, a community room that you could fill with 100 beds, is not a best practice for a number of reasons, right? Imagine if you're sleeping on a cot and you're sleeping 2 feet away from your neighbor and you're eating in that same cot, there's gonna be a lot of tension like there would be in any natural microcosm, right? And so we like spaces that have classrooms that we can use as rooms for housing people. We're doing this currently at the Young Women's Leadership Academy. And so we keep 10 to 15 people in a room. We have large feeding spaces. We have community rooms where people can come and socialize and hang out. We have a community room where they can do IT and computer learnings. And then we have an education and a healthcare room. And those different spaces allow people to spread out. And so when they're having a personal conflict, they don't have to be on top of their neighbor. We make sure that we have the right shelter management based on the number of residents we have in the building. We make sure that we have the appropriate staffing. And so my team can talk to you about what that looks like. We also make sure that we have security, not only at the front desk, but also that monitor the halls and make sure that people are staying safe. The police department, we have a great relationship with community policing, and we also talk, right, about trends and things that we're seeing to make sure that we can prevent anything that happens. And then just privacy for residents, right? We don't allow outside visitors, we don't allow cameras, we don't allow volunteers. That's for the residents' privacy, but also we don't want to make the shelter really a spectacle, right? Like we want to make sure that we make it as normalized as possible. And so individuals that want to volunteer, we create pathways for them to do that outside of coming to the shelter. I think that's it. Did I cover it? Oh, donations. We do accept donations. I think that's just a really big part of the work. As I said, we are working with not much, and we're trying to make a lot happen. And so, as I stated, a lot of people that come off the bus don't have any clothes. The clothes that they leave, Maura and I went to the border, and I can talk about that if people have questions, but we really rely on donations for clothing, underwear, socks, shoes, coats right now that it's winter. And so anyone can go to chicago.gov/support or our Amazon wish list and find ways of how to provide the supplies that we need. Thank you.
People who wanted to ask questions. So could the first 5 people come up? Tara Madison. Oh, let me get my glasses on. I'm sorry. Jenny Newsom, Christine Valderrama. I apologize. Jean Clark and Tito Quinones. Yeah, right there. And you can ask your question, Ms. Madison.
Well, good evening, everyone, community members and the panel. My name is Tara Madison. I've been a member of the Woodlawn community now for 13 years. I'm also a member of the CBA Coalition and the current Woodlawn Working Group that came out of the Woodlawn Housing Ordinance. So I don't know if any of you guys have been engaged in that conversation, but we just recently had a discussion and met about the development that we've been pushing for of affordability and to stop displacement along 63rd Street. And when I first heard of the idea of Wadsworth being used as a shelter for the incoming migrants, I walked over to the school because I'm an individual that walks the community, bikes the community. My children are embedded in the community in school. So I'm even looking forward to having a grandchild attend the University of Woodlawn. So you have to understand as a parent and a grandparent, and you just introduced that this would be a shelter for single men and women, that we as a community of families will have questions about security, about screening, and maybe even background checks. And I don't say that lightly because I spent over a decade working for 2 premier homeless agencies in the city of Chicago, doing your night count, interacting with your shelter systems. So right now, you coming in and giving us a date of January 6th really hasn't allowed the community to even absorb it and say, hey, how can we support this? In the middle of us having what has been maybe a 15-year battle to make sure that Woodlawn remains affordable and the residents that's been here, the homeowners, are not displaced. So I would hope that what you would take from our comments and questions tonight is maybe to reconsider your deadline, because you're not giving us enough time to absorb this. You're throwing things, and we have had very heated conversations over the past 10 years with the city, renters, homeowners, and everybody else that wants to come into Woodlawn. So we would just like to appreciate if you could consider your timeline, because as you stated, Title 42 is staying. We can't expect Congress to make a comprehensive immigration plan in the next 6 months. The Supreme Court won't hear to make a decision on the next 5 to 6 months. So I'm considering what is the duration of the shelter is going to be. Are we expecting it to be a year, 2 years, or 3 years? Give us some idea of what we're going to be working with, because we know our community best. We know our neighbors best. So I would appreciate it if you would give us a little more time, another meeting before you set a deadline. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Madison. Before the next person come up, I just want to remind everybody, we're requesting comments that are limited to 90 seconds to allow for as many questions as possible, because we have like 22 people on Zoom also that want to ask for questions. So panelists, agree for your answers also to be very concise and brief. Ms. Newsome?
Hello, my name is Jenny Newsome. I represent the CAC, which is Central Advisory Council, Local Advisory Council for Chicago Housing. And I am the president of the senior region for this area. Okay, and that's from 31st and Wentworth out to 91st and South Chicago, from the lakefront over to Halsted. Now, this thing about moving people in, right now, currently, City of Chicago has, according to Google, 4,447 homeless people. Now, I'm not against anyone coming in because of their being persecuted. I am a senior. When you guys started construction over there was exactly September 4th, 2022. We seniors there at the Mildred Harris building that they just dedicated to the Chicago Housing Authority Commissioner Mildred A. Harris, we're sitting there watching this. Actually, we were really told in meetings at Reverend Brazier's church that there was going to be a tech center for the seniors and the children in the area. Nothing has happened. All of a sudden, let me tell you how we seniors sat out there eating popcorn on the benches, watching how you took out many, many wooden doors. Actually, what you're really doing, you're really making a prison-like atmosphere for these immigrants. I don't know where your humility is. I don't know where your empathy is, because it's obvious none of you have been homeless. And as far as the mayor not coming here, That was a real slap in the face. You're gonna get on TV and talk about how you love the seniors? Really? So you're gonna bring these single men and single women there. And you got a senior building there with people that are 62 years of age and older. And yes, I am older. This is insane. We can't even walk in that park over there. But you're going to put these people there, and you know it is not a Hispanic or a Hispanic speaking population anywhere. Okay? There's the nearest store is Jewel's at 61st and Woodline. How are these people supposed to get their supplies? Well, I mean, 61st and Cottage, I'm sorry. That was a senior moment. When you get over 70, that's what happens. All I'm going to say is this. Right now, I'm gonna tell you what, I figured this all out because I've listened to all of you. This is a nasty, used Band-Aid effect. Nasty. Talking about, oh, you're gonna give these people inoculations, really? Have you forgot about how you didn't want to give your own residents inoculations? Legal residents. The homeowners that's sitting there, I feel sorry for them. I feel sorry for them for the simple reason they're the ones that stuck with these high tax bills. There are other places that you guys could have done this with, but we all know what the real problem is, and I'm gonna bring out the white elephant that's sitting in the room. The mayor has a problem with Jeanette Taylor. So to hell away with the Woodline community.
Ms. Valderrama?
What I needed to say has been said by the first two individuals, so therefore I'm just going to commute my time right now. Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Clark?
Hi, my name is Jean Clark. I am a long-term Woodline resident. And to think of the plan that you called us here on a cold night and a holiday weekend, we asked for more time. We couldn't get it. So my question to you is, did you call us here to find out what we wanted, or did you call us here to tell us what you're going to give us?
Okay, Mr. Quinones?
Good afternoon, good evening, neighbors and people from the city here. Appreciate you all coming out. I want to start off by giving a big shout out to Alderwoman Taylor for ensuring the city has this conversation instead of what we heard in October, where there was no plan and now there is a plan. So I definitely want to shout out Alderwoman Taylor for making sure there's community input in this process. I want to start by saying that I empathize with people who are living with oppression and violence.
Yeah.
I live in the city of Chicago. I've been the South Side of my whole life. I empathize with oppression and violence. So this is not about the individuals or an attack on individuals, but I'm a father. I have a young daughter that lives in this community. So I've got questions and the things that need to be addressed around safety. I know we used the word safety in the presentation, but there was no actual points on what was actually being done about safety. So that's the first thing here. The gentleman at OEMC said that all the individuals that come in the location are single men and women, not families. I think previous individuals spoke on that. So I have a question, and I don't know if this seems like a public comment, but I see questions and comments on there, so I'm gonna go ahead and ask it. So what exact vetting process is being done when individuals come into Union Station downtown and we decide, okay, let's pick them up, let's put them into any other residential community? Is there background check being done? What is the city doing to provide sureties to people who live in the community, people who have young children, that these individuals are not coming from well, the gentleman said it here, that these people don't have backgrounds that could produce negative impacts on the community. People aren't convicted of sex crimes, of violent crimes, crimes against children. These are the kind of things that people can't get sprung up on January 6th. They're moving in and we don't know anything about the individuals. We don't know anything about what the city's doing to provide these sureties to families. And I'd love to hear a response on that. Stay here.
I'm waiting for the mic to get turned on. Got it? Oh, I have to turn it on? They're all on already.
Guys are fancy.
There we go. All right, thanks. Thank you for your question. One of the things that's important, as I mentioned, is that we don't know who's getting placed on the buses. But the thing is that when folks are entering the border, they're being processed by Border Patrol. In order for someone to say that they want to apply for asylum, they have to pass what's called a credible fear interview, where they talk to a Border Patrol agent. They obviously get their biometrics taken, where they do these sort of background checks. If someone commits a crime, it also puts them at risk of losing their ability to apply for status. And so the folks that are coming here have passed their credible fear interview. They have gone through those checkpoints at Border Patrol, and they understand that getting into trouble can lead to further problems down the road. So that is the situation. We do not know who's coming. Again, we have families, we have kids, we have adults, we have elderly, and that's just the mixed bag that we're given. I do want to push against the narrative, not that you're creating it, but this idea, especially of the idea that potentially the men could be violent. I think that is something that especially the past administration, really sort of fostered this idea of, and I'm not saying you did, I'm just saying in general, because I want us to move away from that and thought. I think all of us, especially who had families that came here, have fathers, have brothers who built a life here in the city, and there's not necessarily a good or bad immigrant narrative. I think these are just people, just like everyone here in this room has their own history, has had their own tribulations. And so, yes, of course, everyone's concerned about safety. Yes, we have our safety officer here. We have police here who are willing to talk about what we do, but the process is really the same across all spectrums and all shelters. And so I just really want to emphasize that point.
So as a clear.
Yep.
Went to there we go. When we went to the border and talked to Border Patrol officials, individuals are screened. And so they do have, I think, up to 10 different databases that individuals are screened for, not just in the US system, but as well as other countries that Border Patrol has access to. Their fingerprints are taken, and people who have committed past crimes, they are sent back and extradited to their home country.
Going forward in this community meeting, and I guess in going forward, I think that we should lead with some facts on that too. What those screening systems are, ensuring that they do cover Venezuela, Nicaragua, Cuba, Colombia, Ecuador, etc. That was mentioned in the presentation. We want to be sure that we're covering all our bases and keeping the community safe.
Thank you, sir. So the next 5 people I'm gonna call, Andre Smith, Carol Waitsey, Fasika Alim, Dr. Byron Brazier, and Julita. I think I cannot pronounce. Can I see the writing?
Bolidar?
Bolidar?
Who gets a Bolidar?
Okay. Mr. Smith?
Hi, my name is Andre Smith. I was born in Woodlawn Hospital in 1968. It really disturbs me to see the back and forth, to see the residents and our seniors in the middle of a bunch of confusion being affected. It's unfair. I heard how well you all prepared your speech, using certain words like informed, prepared, like you want to be informed when the bus is traveling north so you can prepare to receive the residents, as you may say. Well, we in Woodlawn wanted to be prepared too. We wanted to be informed, but we was not. Usually it's a public hearing. I guess this would take the place of the public hearing. I don't care who you are, whether it's the mayor, the governor. When it comes down to the 20th ward, I believe that our aldermen should have raised all kind of hell to make sure that we are informed and not allow this to come together, to happen. So my question is, because this is the first big project, I looked at all your numbers. This is the first big shelter. Are we being punished because of the fight with the alderman and the mayor? Are we being penalized because this is the first big shelter, the massive shelter that you described as the Hilton? They just not paying any rent? Are we being punished by not having any input, and you telling us and you want us to agree with you within the next 9 days that these people are coming here that you call residents, that you want to be informed and prepared for? What about us? We ain't gonna allow it, and we're not gonna accept it.
Yeah. Wait a minute.
Take my glasses off. So from the first time that they came to the community that I didn't know about, and when I found out, when the seniors called me, I called the city and was told that this was gonna happen. And it didn't happen because we organized together. Am I right, Dr. Brage? I want to make sure that we clear the room and we make sense of what's going on. This has nothing to do with the fight between me and them, because they put them in other wards and didn't ask either. It's in 9, it's in 4. There was not a conversation. They decided to do it. They only having this meeting because I said no. So I'm gonna wait. I want to hear it. At the end of the day, I've stood up for this community, and I'll continue to stand whether I'm Alderwoman Jeanette Taylor or not. They do not get to impose what they want on it. They ain't having this meeting because they checking the box. They having this meeting because I said so. I heard from my community. I listen every time. And while we always don't agree with each other, I'm up for the fight every time. Somebody tell me they didn't call me and I ain't stood up. I'll wait. No, it's not even about that. Just like they called me last week. I'm not going back and forth with you. They should have, first of all, they shouldn't have lied on me last time in October and said it wasn't a plan. Does anybody remember that? Does any resident remember that when I sent out the email to say that I was informed that they were moving in Wadsworth, some Latin, and I found other spaces for folks to go because I knew putting them in the middle of a Black ward was not going to work. And to the point, you do have young people. We do have elders. Let me tell y'all something. They asked other communities. I bet you they asked Top Hard. I bet you they asked Lincoln Park. So we can play this. We can fight against each other if we want to, or we either roll together or they gonna roll over on us.
Good evening. I don't think the mic's on.
Can we turn the mic on?
Testing. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Good
ma'am.
evening. Good evening. My name is Carol Waits. I'm a resident of Woodlawn at 65th and Minerva. My 2 properties are directly behind the school. I really appreciate the due diligence and the detail that you have shared with us. My concern is twofold. One, the vagueness of special attention by Chicago Police Department. Given all the other detail that you provided, that is just completely insufficient. As a resident, I appreciate the effort to focus on the safety of our guests coming to the city, but you've not told us any detail about the safety and security infrastructure around that campus where our residents, exercise, walk their dogs, so on and so forth. We can barely get consistent response from the police when we dial 911 now, and I'm not here to debate that. That's not my point, because I do appreciate the due diligence, but I'm very, very concerned that there's no detailed safety and security infrastructure and public plan so that when I walk outside, there's no lighting in that campus right now. The campus has not been maintained until September. And so, and I've lived here for 22 years and I've watched that building go through changes. My second point is, what is the exit strategy? So you have an entry strategy, and I understand that you're being responsive to issues that you can't control, but it would be helpful if later in the future there is an exit strategy that is clearly outlined so the community can at least know how we're going to respond once this goes away. Thank you for your time. Good evening.
Is the mic
Good
on?
evening. Do I have? No. Can you hear me now? Okay, yes. Good evening, everyone. My name is Fasika Alam. I am a Programs Director with the United African Organization, which is a Black immigrant serving organization located just down the street on 61st in Indiana. You know, our community members are, excuse me, among the people that don't make it on the buses, right? They are excluded at the border. And so I'm happy to hear that the city is being inclusive in that you're not, from what I'm hearing, you're not limiting your resources to just people that are getting bused, because that would exclude us. So I'm glad to hear that. But concerning this new site, our biggest concern is how do we make sure that the resources that you are providing are actually equitable for Black immigrants? Thank you.
I can respond to that one.
Wait a minute.
I'll respond to that one. So to talk about, we started seeing a slow trickle of new arrivals from the border from various countries at the beginning of July, August. And we didn't really put two and two together until mid-August. And so no matter what country someone is from that's coming in, if a person comes in and, they need shelter, they're calling 311 for shelter placement. One of the things that we did is we added a question to the shelter intake so that we could really see who was coming into the shelter system. Were they someone who was Chicago homeless individuals, or were they someone that a nonprofit bought their ticket and sent them here, or they found their way outside of a bus? And so no matter what the country of origin is, be it Ghana, Haiti, we've also got Congo and Cameroon, they're still welcome in the shelter. They can still go to the MARC. They're still able to get the health services we do at Cook County Health. A new arrival is a new arrival, regardless of their country of origin coming into us. And that's something that our team has started to track. We are careful not to track anything that's identifying that could have a number for someone, like for us, social security numbers, but we do make sure we can see people of their out migration from the time they enter to our last goal. When you talk about what's the plan is that individuals will be housed and be independent and not need to live in shelter. That is our end goal.
I also just want to clarify. I also just want to clarify too that we have a welcoming city ordinance that prohibits us from asking about immigration status. So that does create a barrier sometimes for us to be able to identify individuals. We are asking in 311 if folks are asylum seekers, who has helped us sort of on-road them to certain services, but we are limited in how we can respond and request for things. But we are obviously having conversations and trying to make sure that we increase awareness of who's there. It's also sort of a flip. So, right, folks coming here, whether they have humanitarian parole or are undocumented, they might be scared of it really using an infrastructure system. And so it's really incumbent on us to build on trust and build trust within community. And to also encourage community members, if you have folks in your community who are parolees or who are undocumented, who need support and services, to be able to say the city is a welcoming city, you have access to these services too. Sorry.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Julieta Bolivar. I'm a mother of 3, and I'm a grandmother of 5. So like that, definitely I do understand concerns that I heard from mothers, grandpas, and everyone in the community. I live in a High Park right now, and right now, like a mother, and for 20 years already, we're giving on Christmas Day to the homeless people. Every Christmas, it doesn't matter if it's freezing, raining, we're on 18th Street and Damon, giving breakfast, lunch to the homeless people. We give them food, and everyone is welcome, right? So I do understand, and I'm thankful to this country for the great opportunity that it gave me I'm a Bolivian, by the way, and volunteer for many, many organizations. And I know if someone calls me, Julieta, I need help, I'll be there. So we are that kind of people here. We're not like here to just come and sit down, and we're asking here opportunity, like a temporary maybe housing. We're not here to stay for long time, right? And we're gonna be here to, you know, to help if it's needed. So please just give us an opportunity. I'm talking to you like a mother, like a human being in this country. That's about what it is about, opportunity. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Byron Brazier. I'm the pastor of the Apostolic Church of God, and I'm also the chairman of the Network of Woodlawn. I do appreciate the humanitarian situation that the city's in. And I do agree wholeheartedly with what comments Carol Waite has made and the issues that the alderman has had to step up to. And we're sensitive on both sides of that. I will say this, that I can imagine that Wadsworth was a good site, given that the community has had plans for Woodlawn for a number of years. And we demanded of the previous administration, and they maintained that. They maintained that building a whole lot different than they did Fisk or Betsy Ross. So we understand that that was the case, but the biggest piece is that was truly an asset that we were planning for, along with Fisk, along with the entire walkability all the way through Washington Park. Because as Woodlawn goes, so does Washington Park and the other and vice versa. And there is a relationship as Kenwood is to High Park, so Washington Park is to Woodlawn. And so as we approach this, this building has already been upgraded. So it's not like you're not coming. It's not like we're not doing this. And it sounds like it's an indefinite time. It's not like it's going to be 30 days or 6 months. This is an indefinite situation that this community now has to replan for. And given this is a growth community that is expandable and that has plans all the way through 2060, that the city and the Department of Planning has already accepted, has already gone to the Plan Commission. Now we have to go back and rethink how all of this is actually going to look, and how we support, how do our plans, our educational plans, our economic development plans now have to support this along with the safety and security. And so the two things that I think that are very important that have already been brought up. One is the timing. Given that the Supreme Court is now brought somewhat of an end to this, understanding that you have a capacity issue, that there should be some minimal amount that you may want to do as a test, which is, I understand what you're doing, that may not impact the community as a whole. But the second thing is that there has to be, out of all of the situations, it is important that, and I'm gonna put this on you, Commissioner, because when I reached out to you, you did reach out to me. So it is important that each one of these statements now that we have said, every 30 days, you should be coming back to this community and answering those questions. Otherwise, it makes this look like a checkbox kind of meeting. So if you're going to do it, then all of these situations and questions need to be answered. In September, when I asked the commander, I said, "Commander, what is your plan?" He said, "I don't have a plan." So all of these things are necessary. And so we're looking to be able to be responsive, because we are a community. We are a community of immigrants. We are a community that's looking to move forward and to grow. And so we understand this. How this is handled becomes very, very important. How we handle this together And even with the development that has been taking place on 63rd Street or attempted to be taking place, it's really meetings like this where we're more told than being a partner. So as we approach this with all the land and everything else that the city owns, it is important that we partner, that the community is looked at as an institution, and you as you would negotiate with a developer, it's the same way that you begin to have partner conversations with the Woodlawn community. Thank you.
So we next have Dr. Deborah Perkins, Ulysses Berkeley, Marcus Gill, and Latisse Porter. Please.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Deborah Perkins. I'm a resident of Woodlawn. And I just have a comment to make. The comment that was made earlier about this is putting a face on, putting a face to this is very important. I think there is perception in our community that it's all about people from the Latinx communities and not Haitians and Africans. And we have to remember as a community why immigration policy that exists in this country, it was purely about keeping America white. Okay, so we have to remember that I'm a social worker, so I have empathy. I have empathy. It's coming. It's coming, but my thing is that we have to make sure there's transparency in our community and that everybody that comes here, is welcome, not just somebody from South America, but from Haiti, from Ghana, whoever, that they are welcome in our community. But, that's my comment, that we got to remember that why immigration exists today. It's purely, was out of racism. That's how it started.
My name is Ulysses Blakely, long-term Woodlawn resident. My family came here in 1957. My father was a pastor of the First Presbyterian Church over on 64th and Kimbark. He was one of the founders of Two Different Homes back in those days. I've lived right behind the Wadsworth School since 2003 and been, moved back to Woodlawn in 1996. And I've been party to and participated in much of the community discussions and planning and what have you with many of the people here. You have to understand, the representatives of the city, have to understand that it is not anti-immigrant or unwillingness to extend ourselves to the the new arrivals, but more of a function of the quite honestly 50-year history of less than good faith responses from the city. The city has not honored the commitments it's made or lived up to its promises, or rarely not reneged on whatever they've agreed to. Rarely. And that is what drives some of the emotion that we're experiencing here. I would like to ask you to, make sure that whatever is discussed and decided, that you put forth your best effort in trying to make sure that you actually deliver that. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I am Evangelist Latisse Porter, and I wear a lot of hats in this community. It's not about me, but I am the Northeast Quadrant leader as well. I'm one of the ministers of the Apostolic Church of God, but I work all over this community in Woodlawn. So I want to make a comment to this sister who is a former immigrant, that yes, you are welcome in this community, and we do welcome immigrants here. And I thank you for bringing those immigrants in. I think you did a wonderful job with the best that you could. But I want to speak to this piece, but I want to give you an example before I do. Right here in Woodlawn, we had a homeless person. okay? She did not have a place to go, and she did not have a way to get to the police department, because it's my understanding she has to go to the police department. They make a phone call to a shelter, okay? So I put her in my car and I took her over to the police department. That's one incident in Woodlawn. The other incident was I was at the Y on 63rd and Stony. There was a lady there. She was homeless and she could not speak. So maybe she was Spanish. We couldn't figure out what she was saying, but I made a phone call. They had an interpreter. This person told her, when I walked away, I thought it was handled, to walk from 63rd and Stony all the way to Jackson Park Hospital. Unacceptable. The last person was someone called me and they said that there was another young lady they were looking for. She had a mental illness in this community. And she was saying that she was a minister or something, but she was not. And so I began to ask, because I walk with the 3rd District Police. I work with them in this community. When I went to the police department to find out about her, she had been staying there for I don't know how long. So my question to you is, I'm grateful for the immigrants and the special care that you are giving them. But what about our residents that actually live here? They live in this community, they live in other communities, and the execution plan for you to revisit those that live in Chicago and make it just as easy for them as you have made it for these immigrants. You've laid out a plan to put them in something like the beautifulest hotel in Chicago. That's fine. But what about our babies that are here living in Chicago now, living in Woodlawn now? My last statement would be the Woodlawn residents, okay? And the meeting that was put together so expeditiously, okay? This is just a few people that were able to get to the other few people that were able to email and say, hey, we having a meeting, did you know? Because I didn't know anything about it. And then when I went on to Eventbrite, I could not even register. So hadn't I been able to get here tonight, I would never even been on the call. You understand what I'm saying? So the other stakeholders, the other community leaders, the other residents in Woodlawn that know nothing about this meeting because they may even be at work right now, they haven't heard about it right now. I actually had to go over to POA and they had to send out a blast to the community, to a lot of residents to even get here or get online. So please put another meeting together so that you can hear from the other stakeholders. Perhaps you may have greater ideas, and our children are very important to us in this community. We still believe, and I'm quite sure they would all agree, it takes a village to raise a child. We still old school in this community. So take care of us so that we can take care of you and them.
Thank you.
I want to address. So I want to talk about the role that we do for homelessness in Chicago. So I have Maura McCauley, who is the Deputy Commissioner for Homeless Services and Gender-Based Violence, and her director, Christine Riley. Christine has been doing homeless work for over 25 years and has been working on the street directly with individuals. So when we started seeing the migrant crisis, the first thing that hit my mind was, we're in trouble. Right? Because when we think about the homeless numbers in Chicago, I have more homeless people on the street, right? There's over 4,000 homeless individuals, about 1,500 of which are living on the street, and only 3,000 shelter beds. Shelter beds are a premium. So the first thing that came to my mind with my team when we started, really planning was, we need more shelter beds, right? And so if we don't have more shelter beds to support new arrivals, what happens is they start to take away beds from homeless individuals. You start to see more homeless individuals on the street. The other thing is we'll start to see more new arrivals on the street. So outside of this work, it's not an either or. It's not, we're going to take resources from homeless individuals and give them to migrants, and we're not going to take resources from new arrivals and give them to homeless individuals. The one thing I can say is that We've been really diligent across the last 2.5 years. Other cities have seen their homeless numbers skyrocket. Chicago has been level. People have seen an increase of those living on the street. It's become more visible because when everything closed down during the pandemic, places that people could hide in plain sight were closed. My colleagues in New York, their homeless numbers are 50,000 plus, right? My colleagues in Texas, right, they're at 7,000 when you look at numbers in Dallas. My colleagues in LA are at 70,000. We're not there, right? And we've got to hold the line. We've been successful, one, because I have an amazing team who does a lot of hard work with street outreach and our nonprofit partners, but we've also had really big investments in homelessness. So over the last 18 months, we've housed 1,800 households. Prior to the pandemic, we probably housed a couple hundred, maybe 300, and it would take 100+ days, if not 200. We now can do that in 60 to 75 days, 1,800 households. Next year, I have about another 35 million that's going to allow me to house another 1,200 homeless households, plus keep the 1,000 that have already housed. We're also investing $20 million on shelter renovation. I'm gonna just be honest with everybody. My funding doesn't allow me to do shelter renovations and turn congregate spaces like this into individual rooms. What did we learn during the pandemic? People fare better when they have their own bedroom and their own bathroom. We want to make sure our shelters do that. And so I'm pulling a lot of tools out of my toolbox, right, to make sure that we don't see the numbers skyrocket for street homelessness and sheltered homelessness in Chicago. But I also have to make sure that we really keep the numbers for new arrivals, that we don't see them on the street, and that we get them connected, either diversion. Number one, do you have somewhere else to go? If we can, let's help them connect with family and relatives across the country. If they decide to make Chicago their place, we're not going to stop it. We've got to help make sure they have a plan, because when they left their home country, they have a plan. Let's help them execute so they can also, because they want to be successful, they want to work, they want to be just like the rest of us and have that American dream. So not forgetting about homeless, that is on our mind. The other question you said is, people don't have to walk to the police station to get shelter. You call 311, they will pick up. If you see someone, right, let us know. When I was driving, I saw someone, I was like, oh, mental note, we got to come take care of the lady on 57th and Stony Island. Maura and Christine are right here, right? So we can talk to you about homeless issues after this meeting, okay? She is, and I'll just say, guys, it's not illegal to be homeless, right? So in Chicago, we are not a right to shelter city. New York is, DC is in the winter. Chicago, I can't force someone to come in. What I will do is we have outreach teams. We have 6 outreach teams at DFSS, plus we work with nonprofit partners. We had people out all throughout the holiday, right? Leading up to Christmas. We added teams to make sure people got out, and anybody who wanted shelter, we reserved beds. So if you had a friend's house and was like, I want shelter, we made sure that we gave preference to those living on the street to get in.
Good evening.
Hello, I just want to let you know, we have to be a little brief because we have over 100 people participating on Zoom. So we want to get through questions this evening. And it's 7:25, so we're supposed to be here till 8 o'clock. So please, we're trying to hear from everybody this evening.
Look, the people on Zoom
Good
should sit
evening.
there for their turn.
My mic, there we go. So good evening. My name is Marcus Gill, longtime resident of the Woodlawn community, and I appreciate this meeting this evening. But what I'm hearing, a lot of people have already shared, but it's more inclusiveness and transparency that comes from the city of Chicago. So what's happening right now are you guys have actually already created this space. And right now, this meeting, it seems as if it has no regards to what we feel or what we say. So when you look at Wadsworth School, that's one of the 13 schools that many schools on the south side of Chicago that we advocated for not to close. And now you're looking at it for to bring migrants into our community. That's one thing. Another thing that happens within our community, as you're speaking on homelessness. So we creating all these different beds and places of residence for people to come out of our country into the city of Chicago. But we have people like Inglewood Barbie that's on social media all the time, facing homelessness. You in a community of organizers. So we don't just talk the talk, we walk the walk. And what you got to understand when you saying, hey, I'm out here doing this, we can call, make a phone call and say, hey, that person on 57, we've been talking about it. We've been reaching out. And we understand that you can't make people do things, but it's more that you can do far as with allocating resources to our community. Unemployment rates for Black people, men who look like me. So you're saying giving people who come in jobs. It's people in my community right now that can't get jobs, that we advocate for all the time, with new development that's coming into our community of Woodlawn all the time. Contractual opportunities. People who look like me, people who look like these individuals inside of this community, that we have to be in the business, speak to the city of Chicago all the time, and things still never takes place. So we're sick and tired of being sick and tired, right? Tired of you all coming into our community, telling us what you're going to do, right? You all work for us, right? We constituents that give you all jobs. You're taking taxpayers' dollars. Where's the funding coming for this? Because there's got to be some funding. So when you're saying federal funds coming in, where's the federal funds for people who are being displaced out of high schools and being kicked out of mental health clinics, right? Because you're saying they're having all these different challenges. These are the challenges that we've been facing all the time. I have lost people, friends. Please don't cut me off. Friends, death in this community of Woodlawn. And now the Woodlawn community is changing. Y'all wouldn't have been here 30 years ago. Obama Foundation, none of that coming. I wouldn't have saw y'all. There's no way that y'all would have got any school in here that say we go seek some asylum people.
No time for speech.
They ain't gonna let you in. That's the honesty. So we here today, we want inclusiveness. We want real transparency. And that's that date, January 6th, you got a lot of people that's we're not gonna let it happen. Just to be honest with you.
Thank you. Did we really get the list of people coming up?
Wait a minute.
Hello?
a second. I'm sorry. Again, my name is Christine Riley. I'm a director with Homeless Services with DFSS. So part of my, outside of the regular homeless system in which we manage over 50 shelters, outreach, prevention and so forth, is part of this mission is to do site visits. So we have not done an official walkthrough of Wadsworth to do a count of how many people would be able to be in this building. As Matt stated, you know, it's a good building and we learned a lot. I'm saying a good building because we learned a lot during COVID. During COVID, no one expected a pandemic to break out. Again, at that time, we had to decompress our current shelter system. We were able to set up shelter at Young Women's Leadership Academy. And from there, we were very successful in having a population of 200 women at that time transition from that shelter into housing. Majority did transition into housing or to other shelters. And the school system, as Commissioner was stated, is better than a larger congregate setting, putting 100, 200 people in a large space because you have classrooms. As Matt stated before, we've done a lot of, I've done a lot over the past few years in trying to find spaces. We've gone to sites that Alderwoman Taylor has shown us. Unfortunately, the space is not conducive to what we're looking for. Again, we have staff that we're contracting with, that we're putting in these spaces. And in order for us to build a safe community, a shelter community, we need to have enough staff. If we only have like 23 beds in one location and the amount of money we'll put into staff is really not worth it. So we would rather have a large facility and, as Commissioner stated, have different spaces within that community so people aren't on top of each other all together. So again, Wadsworth, because somebody asked earlier about the number of people that we will put in. Finally, we don't have that number because we have not done an official walkthrough to count spaces or count rooms. I can't tell you how many rooms are in Wadsworth. I don't know, to see how many are in there. I'm sorry. So we don't know how many, but we know that it's a large enough school with classrooms, from what we've been told, that we will be able to separate on different floors, men and women. So we have not done an official walkthrough of the school to determine how many people maximum we'll be able to put in that school.
Thank you.
Okay, so my name is Arinda Troutman. I am the former alderman, and I see former Alderman Cochran here. And I want to take my hat off to Alderman Jeanette Taylor, who made sure that we had an opportunity to talk to you guys. It's really disrespectful for any kind of project to occur in a ward and the alderman not have the opportunity to have a community meeting. That's what we did when Dr. Brazier spoke. He was talking about the history of this ward. Leon Finney, Dr. Brazier, myself, 20, 30 years ago, when we had meetings to take down the L, develop the campus park. That was under my watch, Wadsworth Park. But I'm not going to go on and on. You said there's a lot of people that want to talk. But what I will say is that in the future, wherever you put your next place, it should be incumbent upon you to speak to the residents. Let the residents have a say. My taxes has quadrupled. So I think I should have a say in what goes on in this community. As a matter of fact, I live right by Wadsworth School. I want to say, so since this is going to happen, and but I hope you guys go back to the drawing board. But if this do happen, I want to know, will residents still have access to the campus? Like I've been jogging and walking in the Wadsworth, in that park forever. And will we still have access? That's one thing. And it was in a horrific shape now. Someone said that until you guys decided to do this, no one trimmed the trees. If you walk, I couldn't walk through the trees would hit me in the face. Yeah, since the University of Chicago campus built their own, built their school, their new school, there was nothing being done. The grass, the garbage, the lights, debris was all over the place. So we are happy that you cleaned it up. I thought you were cleaning it up for us, but I see you're not. How long will the people stay there? The community should be able to provide essentials such as furniture, food, maintenance, daycare, social service. Let the community profit by this. You said, so where's the funding coming from? You said the federal government. This is Homeland Security, whoever. So those contracts, there are people who have daycares in the community. There's people that have various businesses. Will they be able to have some contracts? Who do the local businessmen and the non-for-profit contacts for those kind of services? Because you said there's going to be a lot of services. So I think we, the residents here, we're the non-for-profits, we're the organizations, we should have first choice in that. And lastly, you said something about up on Belmont is where the medical is being taken place. So now you're gonna have to transfer people all the way from here to Belmont. There was no facility between here and Belmont? That's hard to believe. That's hard to believe. Thank you very much. And everybody who spoke before me, you guys did a great job. I didn't have to say much.
I just want to emphasize something again. I want to underscore the fact that this is an emergency response. And I think the commissioner mentioned, if we're not building shelters, we're taking from the current shelter structure that we have. So that's one thing. The other thing that I think is very important when it comes to the funding and support, there is no federal funding for this. We are tapped into a FEMA grant that is helping supply reimburse some of the costs in terms of emergency shelter and support. But unlike Afghanistan refugees, unlike Ukrainian refugees, there is no federal bill that's coming down the pike to help support this. Someone previously mentioned work permits. These folks aren't eligible for work permits for at least 6 months. If that, it's going to take longer, and it's $500 to apply for a work permit. So these folks, again, are being placed here without much of a decision, without access to work, without access to benefits, and we are then charged with ensuring their safety, and we're providing them basic needs. So I want to underscore, I know this was a fast meeting. I know this is necessarily enough time for the dialogue you wish we were able to have, but this is what we're responding to in a response situation, an emergency response situation. And so I understand there's going to be some pinches and some growing pains, but I'm hopeful we can continue this conversation. And we're definitely tracking notes about timelines and security concerns that we can follow up on. But I just wanted to emphasize that point. Thank you.
So the next,
Hold on, April, the other thing about Cook County, the
wait a
healthcare.
minute, everybody.
The healthcare is provided by Cook County Health. So city, county, state, everybody has a role to play. The role that the county is playing is on their healthcare. And so we've got a shelter at 95th and Harvard. Individuals are bused. That was the location where they had the most space and were able to have the medical care and doctors to support seeing over 150 people a day. Would we like to have it somewhere else? Yes, but it's their show in terms of the healthcare, because that's not what we do at DFSS and OEMC.
Okay. We will next have the next 5 people: Tracy Thompson, Zarifa Shahid, I'm sorry, Netza,
I don't know if you got it.
and Kenneth Newman, and Dr. James Walton. What'd you say?
Hello, thank you all for,
Brief, thank you.
so this is a letter email that I sent to Mayor Lori Lightfoot October 24th when I first learned about this with questions. Never got a response beyond the automatic response. Thank you for your blah, blah, blah. So when you all say this is an emergency, I, as a person sitting in the house, knew about this since October 24th. There was that much time to have this meeting. So to wait to this point and say now this is an emergency with Title 42 having been suspended is suspect. We've already heard the number was 250 single men and 250 single women. To say now that you all don't know the number is also suspect. My question, because everybody did a good job. They answered most of the questions. Who's being paid to provide these services, and are they getting no bid contracts? There was a company from Elk Grove Village, nobody from Woodlawn, that was out there at Wadsworth 24/7 doing work. My question was just, how did they get it? How does that work? I would like to know. We weren't able to really see the screen with the wards where the shelters already are. Need to know if there's been an impact on crime in the area where people have been placed. Not a racist question, it's a safety question. There was a comment about if a person is a habitual rule breaker, they would be turned out onto the streets. So are they being turned out onto the streets of Woodlawn? And how does that work if somebody is already a rule breaker? Are they sent back to the border? What happens there? Because if a person is a rule breaker, that means they're more likely to be a crime committer. I don't know how else to say it. And turning it out where my specific taxes have gone up $2,000 in 1 year, it's a problem for me personally. And last, just a comment, I understand that people in Central America, South America, those countries are having a really hard time. And the young lady said they don't leave for a joyride. I just want to say, people don't leave Haiti for a joyride either. However, we have seen them turned away consistently. And thank you all for your time.
Hi, everybody. My name is Zarifa. I'll make this brief. I appreciate all the points that everybody's made so far. I've lived here forever. I also jog right behind Woodlawn and Wadsworth, and I've seen all the development. That's another point. I'm not going to ask questions about timeline, whatever. Everybody else already asked those questions. I don't think that's worth my time right now. So my question is this, since this is happening, one, I think a lot of people talked about safety, but I want to talk about or ask about what does integration look like? Because those people, when they come to this community, they're not going to just sit in the building. That's not going to be healthy for them at all. That's not going to be healthy for anyone. People need light. People need to walk. I think one of the ladies asked about whether or not residents would have access to that park. Still, I jog in that park regularly, so I would have that same question. But what would that look like for those who are going to be brought here for, however long they're going to be here? How will they be integrated into this community? How are their needs going to be balanced with those of the community? And how are interactions between those who've just got here, who have to learn a new culture, who have to learn possibly even a new language, how are those needs going to be balanced with the needs of this community, which are, I don't know if our needs are necessarily being considered when we're talking about cultural and regional differences that they're going to have to face when they're integrating into this community. So I just want to know how those things are going to be addressed and whether or not there will be support not only for residents who will be living there for however long they're going to be living there, but also community members that will be living nearby and have to learn to structure their interactions with those people who will be coming in, their new neighbors. So I just want to know what that looks like.
Okay. That's a great question. Thank you so much. I think that is what I want to emphasize is that people have been arriving to Chicago in this way, in this method, outside of the buses since Chicago was Chicago. And normally the city, the state, the county is not as engaged in helping folks resettle. So there's actually a new opportunity for us to become more involved, to help folks become more stable, and to talk about what this looks like to actually help folks resettle. When refugees come, it's a situation between the federal government and national resettlement agencies. The city is not involved. So even with refugees, it's not something we normally participate in. So integration is a question we're talking about all the time. The timeline, we're talking about it all the time. It's difficult, again, without the federal support that we really need, but we're looking to see what the next horizon for this looks like. So that's a lot to say. We're not exactly sure, but clearly that's an important question. And we're open to ideas and suggestions because integration is important, as is for the folks that are coming, for the culture shock they're going to experience, and for folks to also be aware of new neighbors that might be in their area. So thank you for raising. I think it's an ongoing question.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Netza Roldan. I am the Executive Director of the Binational Institute of Human Development, a nonprofit organization. And it happens to be that we are one of the organizations that now are going to shelters to try to help these newly arrived immigrants to meet their requirements to apply for asylum. Immigration is just a topic that is very complex. And it's very difficult to understand if we don't understand our history. We all were immigrants that were brought here, that came here, forced unwillingly to this beautiful country that is ours. And I think I've heard a lot of topics of preservation. Unfortunately, some people think that this is a very publicity, a lot of publicity people get because they're talking about the new immigrants, So it's a very, I would say, very good topic for politicians now, And here the community I'm hearing and listening to all my fellow residents and citizens, and I love all of them because they are very good in speaking the truth. Former alderman, and I want to thank the alderman for being Janet, for allowing us to speak directly to you. And I know that you're also trying to preserve your job. That's why you're speaking about how great of a job you're doing with sheltering and all of that. But I respect you and I understand it, okay? But they also want to preserve what they have worked so hard for. And we are in the same place. We're on the same boat. So one day, like 2 months ago, I met with Lori Lightfoot, the mayor. And personally, and I'm nobody. I'm just another guy in the community. And I told her, you know what? On March 15, remember when the Ukrainians had that big, emotional, also the tragedy of their coming here to this country because of the war? I personally wrote a letter to Senator Durbin. And I told Senator Durbin, this country has been the country of refugees. See, after the Second World War, we received Jewish, we received Vietnamese, Korean, Chinese, everybody now. So we are still the home of refugees. But I said, really quick, we proposed to him that he should change, or he should advise the president and Alejandro Mayorkas to change the law and establish the host program. The host program, so people like us are ready to host a person that wants to come here, and we're ready to help them. So there won't be a charge for the government and for the citizens that are being forced to get these people in there. And you know what? 1 month later, they announced the program. And there's a program with an I-134. If you go online and welcome Ukraine, you will see they made it happen. President Biden on April 16 announced that there was going to be a refugee host program where they will do a humanitarian parole. So people who will, and they have the system, they have the know-how. People who are ready to host somebody and prove that they're ready, they will host somebody. And we have Ukrainians come here.
Thank you very much, sir.
You can do the same thing here.
We'll take that.
I will send somebody from my office. Never did. So you can quit, pay your language right there, or talk to the Senator Durbin, and they can make it happen.
So let me
People like me who want to help personal direction to our immigrants.
Okay.
So I just want to
Thank you very
clarify.
much.
I want to clarify, first of all, that the federal response to immigration is in the hands of the federal government alone. Mayor Lightfoot has written many letters of advocacy through both Cities for Action and herself alone. I'm talking, thank you. And it's important to know that that advocacy has happened. We agreed we wouldn't disrupt, right? So I just want to ensure that this decision of whether or not folks have access to resources, to benefits, to work permits is not the decision that lies in the hands of Chicago, unfortunately, because if we did, this would be a very different situation. And so I'll move on. Let's go to the next speaker. Thank you.
Mr. Newman? Mr. Newman?
Thank you. So I'm a fourth generation Hyde Parker who has cared about people from all over the world. I've just finished my 50th year involved in soccer, and I have known people from every continent, maybe not from Antarctica. So I welcome people from everywhere. I'm also a founding member of the Hyde Park Kenwood Community Action Council, which is a CPS school reform group. And I was very excited when I first got invited to this meeting, courtesy of the mayor's office, about the school being used. But then I started worrying about what's the story about these immigrants and their backgrounds. And I was very concerned that Chicago Police Department were not going to get the fingerprints, facial recognition about these immigrants. Who knows who's coming to stay at this school and could endanger the people of Woodlawn, Hyde Park, South Shore, wherever. I spend a lot of time in Woodlawn. I've helped found several park advisory councils of the parks in Woodlawn. And also I shop at the new Jewel. Thank you, Mr. Leon. So as I look back on your decision to do this. While I want this school used for a positive situation, I'm also very concerned about what these people are going to be doing during the day. I think within a week, you should be starting English classes in the building, because I lived in Miami 15 years. You want to talk about refugees? I could spend the next 5 hours talking about my 15 years in Miami.
Thank you.
So my
Thank you very
point
much,
is,
sir.
is that English classes are number one, aside from health and getting, if there aren't going to be any kids here, we have empty classroom spaces in Woodlawn at various schools. There's an opportunity. Maybe you should bring families to Wadsworth.
Thank you very much, sir.
So last thing. So I would like to see the group of you addressing the public on a weekly basis as to what's happening once the refugees start coming here. And what are people going to be, for instance, are they going to be, you said, maybe going on to other cities? Are you going to be bringing more here? Now that, of course, depends on Governor Abbott and other people in the South. But please make sure that your relationship with the local public is a constant flow of communication.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. I want to remind you again, everyone wants to be heard. So the longer everyone speaks, the other people who are on Zoom or in the room will not be heard. So please, limit your comments to 90 seconds if possible, so that everyone who wants to be heard can be heard.
Good evening, everyone. I am Dr. James M. Walton. I'm a 20-year resident of Woodlawn. I am humbly serving as the president of the Kenwood Point Block Club, 6400 to 6600 South Kenwood, and I'm also a founding member of the Woodlawn We Want Alliance. There have been a lot of questions asked that have not been answered. I would ask that you make sure prior to your 9 days of trying to come in to establish yourselves that you answer these questions. But I think the conventional wisdom would be not to move in January 6th.
Right.
Now, people ask me up to this meeting, is this a done deal? I kept saying, well, I don't know. But people said, yes, it is. I was asked, is this a checkbox for the city so that they can say they had input? I said, well, I don't know. This is what I do know. If the community input is not going to be taken into consideration based on all of my residents that have spoken before me, then this is a done deal. This is a checkbox, and you had no intention of including us because you tried to do this earlier this year. So all I'm saying is this. I was a part of that letter that asked for more time before this meeting was to be established. We tried to come correct. I'm not a fighter, but I do know how to argue. In order for this to happen, Wadsworth had to stay available. Since 2018, we have been trying to repurpose Wadsworth in this community.
That's right.
We kept getting no, you can't do it. No, we don't like that plan. So I'll just end like this. I've raised 2 children. I have grandchildren. 2-year-olds, one of the first words they learn is the word no. That's right. You all have been saying no to us. We're saying no back.
Right.
Good evening, everyone. My name is
Okay, he didn't sign up, but he's a former.
of the ward. Mic being cut off doesn't mean anything, but it's disrespectful. Thank you.
You need to walk closer.
Now, it's on now.
So it's on there.
This is a very important issue. And I wanted to approach this not from an angry point of view. I want to take my time and talk about the issues that are bearing on this process. First of all, I want to say that this is a public administrative process, and the public administrative law has not been followed here. notice, response, and engagement has been violated. Construction has been going on at that school for months. And so we have had time to be notified and have input and have responses brought to us. And I want to commend Alderman of the 20th Ward, Jeanette Taylor, for her stance in supporting our community. She's been strong in that perspective. And I have to say that I've been around here for about 43 years. As a resident, as a police officer, as a community builder, this community has advanced tremendously. And it's been because we have been engaged. It has been a planning process. We have worked with the city. We have worked with the federal government. We have worked with the senators. We have worked with governors. We work with state representatives, and we intend on doing that and continue to do that. There are some things that have been said here tonight that I would like everyone here to take into consideration, that I would like to bring back up. When I hear that there's a number of people, male and female, that will be in that building, and I hear someone on the podium say they haven't walked through and they don't know what the capacity is. It's contradictory. We don't know what the configuration of the place is. We, or group of our community, has not been invited to walk through the building and see what's going on. We have been in a community that has been involved and worked with the President Obama, to build this as a promised community that has asked that education, social services, bringing up those who have not had in our community to thrive, get educated, improve our schools, and improve our housing. And we have been doing that. Wadsworth has been asked to be a performance arts center. We wanted to be able to bring movie creations into that building, movie theaters, a central place where we can support our community that has now building 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, $1 million homes. At the same time, develop affordable housing, quality affordable housing. We're moving poor quality housing and replacing it with good quality housing. We have a plan. We have a plan. And that plan is being ignored. You can't ignore us. You can't ignore all of the years. No. Ain't no thank you very much. 8 o'clock is not a deadline for us in this community to be able to speak. We need to
But
be
we
able.
still have several people
Okay,
to talk.
can
that
I have
signed
you
up.
some time, please? Are you all okay with that? Okay. All right. What is being done by the federal and state government to implement and restrict those people who are coming from different states? There was a governor that was up on the East Coast that cut people off at their border to prevent COVID from spreading. What is our governor and other people doing to cut those buses off and form a good process? Yes, we are an immigrant community, and we want to be able to ensure that immigrants get here and advance. And we want our community to be involved in that process. We want to be heard. We want to be honored. We want the mayor to reconsider this. We want to also let you know that because the public hearing process has not been taken place, that we need to review the process, that has been taking place. And to ensure that as we come and inform the community, that we inform us in a way that we understand, and those people who are in charge understand that the comments that they make need to be consistent. What is the maximum number of immigrants this community can expect? What is the security and the social services providers that will be doing it? No outside visitors. What is the policy? How was that arrived at? How will we monitor the residents? What is the policy of retention and eviction? How long can these people stay in this place?
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank
I
you.
want to thank you for being tolerant of me. Let's keep the strength and the guidelines of this community moving forward so that we can continue the progress in a form that we have been consistent in doing. We cannot let this be disrupted. We are going to have immigrants.
Much, sir. Can we please have Miss Marilyn Massey?
Water.
Marilyn Massey,
Other things.
Linda
We
Hardy,
have to understand how immigrants,
and Charles Harris.
both outside our country and inside our country, is going to evolve.
Nobody's coming.
Let's be a model for that to take place. And that model means that our community and our leadership has to work together to formulate.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Latrice. I am a longtime resident. I agree with what was said, but my one question that I would just like to have some understanding is the process of, in my understanding, the homeless shelters, the people are able to come in the evenings, or they're provided, I guess, dinner, they spend the night or whatever, and then during the mornings, they're released. Just tell me, how does that work?
Turn it on. Let's try this. Oh, there we go. Okay, so most of our shelters are 24-hour shelters. During COVID, we actually were able to get city funding to expand hours. So we have about 6 shelters that are emergency shelters where they're only 12 hours in our regular homeless system, but the majority are 24 hours. So there's no 7 a.m. comes and people get released like maybe you see at the Pacific Garden Mission. For the alternate shelters that we're doing for migrants, they're 24 hours. So people don't have to be out by a certain time and line up to come in at a certain time. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
Thank you very much. So I called off the last 3 people that were on the list for the room because I want to make sure that everybody.
They provide meals, 3 meals a day.
Yes.
They get a cot, a blanket, and a pillow, showers, and a change of clothes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So I just want to make sure I had 3 people left. It was Marilyn Massey, Linda Hardy, and Charles Harris. If not, we would like to move to the people on Zoom to ask their questions, because you had to sign up before 6:30 to be able to ask a question. And this is the list that I'm working from. Okay. You're setting up. What's your name, sir? Okay.
Did everybody else go?
No, you go ahead.
Okay. Mic on? Okay. I grew up in this ward all my life. Been a resident here. And I've watched and went to school in this ward. I went to actually to Carnegie, and I also went to Mount Carmel. So I've actually been here and living and seeing this community progress. I used to remember when I used to be the only one on the block, to now you can't find no parking on the block, you know? Everything that I was gonna touch on has already been touched on by many others. So there's nothing I really want to touch on, but I am grateful and glad to see that the community members here are engaged and taking this seriously, you know? And we also, we welcome immigrants. But also don't want you to forget about us here in this ward. Thank you.
All right, sir. So now we're up on Zoom. Laura, the first person is Kelly Wimbush Fairley. Do they have the question on Zoom?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, we hear them in the
Thank
room,
you.
yes.
Thank you. My first question, I have a couple of questions. My first question is in regard to one of the slides that was posted. Several individuals in the chat had a question in regard to the numbers that were listed as far as other immigrant shelters that had been created in the city, but only ward numbers were listed. And we wanted to know those actual neighborhoods. So if someone could please list those for us, that would be great. Another question is, it seems that we continue to ask the same question. However, no one has given us a direct answer. And I would really appreciate a direct answer as far as security in our neighborhood and moving forward, because it's very clear that this is going to happen and this is going to take place. And security is not just for Woodlawn residents. This is for the immigrants who will be housed in this school as well. As we know, crime has been pretty bad, specifically in the Woodlawn community. And we know that criminals are predators and they will prey on the most vulnerable, who will be the immigrants who are residing in that school. So as we know, the Chicago Police Department has stated that they do not have the manpower. So what is being done by the city to secure the area and protect Woodlawn residents as well as the incoming Woodlawn residents, the immigrants? The final question is, what is being done to provide jobs to assist in this infrastructure or help improve it for as far as providing jobs for Woodlawn residents? Thank you.
So we do.
Yeah, Mike can.
Alderman, you want to say anything?
Hello?
Hi, Ms. Kelly. This is Tara Owens from Alderwoman Taylor's office.
You just cut off. All I heard was this is someone from Alderman Taylor's office.
I mean, there's in the test, there's nothing, when we did the test, everything was fine. Because look, I disconnected, I plug it back in. Hello? I can hear 'em now.
Hello?
Get the mic.
Testing.
I can hear somebody now.
We can hear you.
Okay.
Hello? Should I repeat the questions?
You wanna put the wireless?
Yes, please.
Okay. My first question was in regard to the slides that were posted. There was a slide in which there were a few immigrant shelters listed. And we wanted to know in which neighborhoods those shelters resided, as opposed to just the ward number. So if someone could list those. The next question was, what is the city planning to do as far as securing the area in general Due to the high crime in Woodlawn, and when I say securing the area in general, I mean the Woodlawn residents as well as this new shelter. The final question is, what jobs or opportunities are available for the residents of the community since this new shelter will be coming about?
I just want to say we were having some technical difficulties, but I know that staff is able to hear the question because the people in the room weren't able to at the moment. Right. All right, well, we have want to go back. This is the slide with the shelter. So this slide and maybe that was the same to where the environment.
Yeah, I can give a little estimation on where this are. May not always know the exact neighborhood, but Shield of Hope is 937 North Orange, Indiana, west neighborhood.
Humble Park.
North Park Village is at Lasky and Peterson, which
North Park.
High Ridge YMCA to Western and Tui. Close to West Rutherford Park. Young Women's Leadership Academy is 641 South Cadet, Bronzeville.
Could you speak up, please?
College is Wilson and Sheridan. That's
Town.
Another Chance Church is at 95th Harvard. This is a little better. Good. The HI Hostel is downtown on east side of B Wells. Parthenon Hostel is in Greektown on Halsted Street. New Life Community Church is at Damon and Wellington, Lakeview area. Neon Beach Park is at Sheridan and Tui. So that's the Edgewater getting into Rockers Park area. And Selena, Chicago is 100 East Chestnut, the River North.
So the next person is Ann Video.
Excuse me, all of my questions were not answered.
Could you repeat them, please?
No.
Hello? I can repeat the second question. My second question was in regard to what is the city doing concerning safety for the area and security for the area for both the immigrants and the residents of Woodlawn?
Christine Riley again from DFSS. So part of our staffing structure, as mentioned earlier, is that we have security. We do have security on site. They are not armed security at any of our sites, but we do have security on site. And it depends on the number of security guards, depends on how the building is structured, meaning if there's a lot of corners and rooms, we'll have more security than not. It depends on the total number of people on site. We do work with our Department of Assets and Information Systems and their security team to do a training for the security that's on site. And as stated earlier, we are in close contact with regular meetings with the CPD to see if there's any issues, as well as the special attention. So the security that we do hire and contract with, they are within the school. They do rounds. At least one round at our other site, they're doing at least one round outside to make sure that there's no issues outside of the building, and also they're doing rounds within the building. Depending on the structure of the school, you may have a security guard on like every floor, or every other floor, depending on the size of the school. So we do have security within the school, and in some locations there are security stationed outside, and it just depends on that.
Thank you for that answer. And the final question was simply in regard to job opportunities for the residents of Woodlawn, since this new shelter will be place within the community.
They want to know about job opportunities for the residents of Woodlawn. That's a good one.
So part of the work is that these are contracted teams, so team members are able to hire from within the community for either the case managers or the security staff that we have. We also leverage contracts that we have additionally for food service for our older adults as well as state contracts. So we can definitely share information. I would say at DFSS overall, we have support for individuals who need jobs. And so we can definitely have conversations about other ways that we can support outside of just this, but what we offer at DFSS. We've got a website with Bryce Kip that has done. Oh, I need to be louder. Sorry. Overall, we do offer workforce development training at DFSS, so we can also talk about ways outside of just this particular project that overall we can support with jobs and job training and apprenticeships program that we offer at DFSS.
So the next person, Ann Padilla.
Hello, everybody. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
It is very sad to hear many of the previous comments. So hear the racist narratives about crime and who are immigrants. This narrative of them against us, the narrative of they will be taking from us, and we've heard that before. And we continue to hear that in other migrations. Why are we fighting for crumbs for our communities? Why don't we make sure that the city, the state, and the county fulfill their promises? And as a former supporter of Alderwoman Taylor, she has lost my support. Immigration is a human right.
Hello.
Next person, thank you very much. Next person, Lakeisha Spike.
Can you be louder?
Next person, Liz Gardner. Gardner, are you on?
I yield. Thank you.
Please ask, you said you?
She yielded.
Yeah. Okay, Linda Flor. Info?
Hi, yep, I'm here. Can you hear me? Yes, I yielded my time.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Linda here. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Hi. So I just wanted to say that it is extremely alarming that the city made this decision without consulting the residents of Woodlawn. And I'm speaking as a community organizer, somebody who has been at the Mark, who has been working with the folks who have been coming these past few months. And we are obviously seeing a lot of division happening today at this meeting, and I don't blame anybody else but the city. I think these proposals are not being consulted with organizers, folks from the community that are either working with these immigrants already, or also folks from the community who still are saying that they want to support, but they just want more time. And I think that their concerns are valid, and I think that the city has to do a better job of pulling people in instead of making decisions as if they are part of these communities, as if they see the suffering that these communities experience, both in Woodland and also folks who are currently coming in here who are also suffering a lot of trauma. And I don't think that the city has done a good job of incorporating community groups within the decision-making process. And at the end of the day, people are going to be harmed when you have folks who, again, have experienced a lot of trauma on their journey here and are being met with, folks who are also expressing valid concerns. And it's only going to continue to create more division. And I also want to speak out a little bit about the actual conditions at the shelters in terms of what you all are proposing. Again, as somebody who has witnessed the meals that you all have been giving to them, that the city isn't doing a good job of making sure that the actual quality and of care that they're giving these folks are not is up to par, that it's dignified. And so I would just like to say that you all need to do a better job, and also would love to hear you all and like answer the question that a lot of people are asking in this meeting of how you all are going to incorporate community members in these decision-making processes, whether it be with this or anything that you all do in the future, to make sure that everybody is protected and that everybody's dignity is respected throughout the process. Thank you.
I just want to clarify something. I just want to ensure that folks know that we have had ongoing conversations with the larger different advocacy groups, including organizers, about how we support folks. That has been an ongoing conversation since even the first fest began, when we heard the inklings and we heard about the walk-in. So of course, we want to incorporate more voices. We want to incorporate folks who will help us move forward with progressive immigration policies, because that's what the city stands for. So absolutely, we've been talking to organizers. We welcome anyone to contact me who wants to participate in those conversations, because we want to make sure that those voices are heard as well. I'll yield on the rest about the shelter space, but I just wanted to make sure that that was understood.
Heather Malpass. Peter Wilson.
Heather's here. Yeah. Hello.
You have a question?
Yeah, super fast. So basically I was very close to a yield on my questions, because I feel like a lot of people have asked similar things that I was concerned about. But the one thing that keeps resonating with me is basically the conditions of the Wadsworth building. And I know for an absolute fact of the lead paint, the asbestos, the mold, and just the overall conditions of that building. And I know that you've been working on it for months, but unless you have completely gut rehab that entire building, you're putting those families in risk. That's the number one. The number two is, I can't even wrap my brain around. I think that sometimes with people's frustration and concern about the lack of respect, I've been here 20 years and I totally understand it. I think that's really what's driving a lot of the way that people are trying to communicate their frustration sometimes gets lost in the conversation. But what I really feel as though you're putting them in substandard conditions. That's number one. Number two, I can't even wrap my brain around the fact that these people are walking in not only to a new country, a new state, a new city, and they're plunked down in the middle of a community that basically doesn't speak their language. We are still a food desert, even though we've been tagged with 500% increase on our taxes. We don't have the means to support these people, and they deserve way more than what you will plan to provide. So what I want to know is a detailed plan in terms of at least the number one thing is, what have you done in the Wadsworth building to make it habitable for these people?
I can partially address that. Let me start with the comment about asbestos lead. We did have environmental come in a couple months ago. We did abatement on those issues. We did testing afterwards, and it totally passed the test for asbestos and lead. Some of the other work that's been done there in recent months, those toilet installation, bathroom partition installation, door replacements, fixing roof leaks, repairing the elevator, doing a lot of plumbing work, repairing the hot water heater, repairing the furnace, a lot of tile work and tile repair, general just facility cleaning. And I'll just also mention that we've got a success story currently with one of our other decommissioned CPS schools. That's Young Women's Leadership Academy on Calumet Avenue, which has similar features to Wadsworth. We've been using that since early on in the operation, and it's gone well there. And we feel comfortable and confident about using Wadsworth as a shelter as well.
Next, Sarita Wilson.
Good evening, everyone. This is Jerquaya Wilson. So it sounds like this process has happened, right? And it sounds like the community is not, we're not really saying, what we're saying is people weren't respected. The community wasn't respected. They weren't informed. So my question is, at this point, is what former Alderman Cochran said about process being circumvented, is that true? Is there some type of injunction that can be given to halt process now until the community is properly informed or heard? And then in this coming from our mayor, what's our next administration move in terms of if the community is ignored, are we prepared to have the same mayor again?
Thank you very much. Laura Mendoza. Rena Marco.
Hi there. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes, we
great.
can.
Okay, great. I'll be really brief because I want to be upfront about the fact that I'm not a resident of the Woodlawn community, but I do live in Uptown, and there was a question in the chat from someone earlier about, you know, what things have been like in other communities here in Chicago where there are shelters for new arrivals. So, you know, it's on the screen, you can see it. There is a shelter here in our community in Uptown for single men. I walk around every day. I'm a walker in my community too. And, you know, this has been for a couple of months now. There hasn't really been, you know, any like disruptions to our community, hasn't been impacted or changed things on a day-to-day basis. And this was in the much earlier stages, you know, when we were dealing with 3 to 5 buses, sometimes more every day. So, you know, there wasn't, I guess, just as a comparison and something, you know, that's gone in another community here in Chicago, to have that deep involvement in terms of planning with the Uptown community as well. You know, I just want to add really briefly too that I've been part of the group that's been on the ground to welcome recently arrived immigrants over the past 3 months. You know, so at Union Station, at the shelters, at the Mark, and have known then like firsthand how difficult it has been, not just for the city and the state, but also for community-based organizations like ours that do work with immigrants to respond to this, you know, as it has been said, emergency situation, emergency humanitarian response. That's really been completely unprecedented in terms of anything that that we've seen before in this space, and just wanted to acknowledge that and acknowledge how tirelessly I know so many people have been working on it. So I completely respect and understand the Woodlawn community's request for more time and for a true partnership. Those are very valid concerns and valid requests, and just simultaneously want to acknowledge an understanding of the difficulty of trying to figure out this huge puzzle when so much of this has been outside of our control. So I will just leave it there. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Sandra Bivens, Ms. Bivens.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you know, you all need to turn up your volume from your end a little bit because we can hardly hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you, but you're very low.
Okay, sorry about that.
Okay, I'm Sandra Bivens. I'm a 40-year resident of Woodlawn and also 40-year community organizer here in Chicago. And much that was said today, I agree with, but I also wanted to say that I agree with the young lady earlier who stated, why are you putting a group of people, dropping them into a totally, like dropping them in the middle of the African-American community where people can't even communicate and speak with each other? And I always like to be real, and this has nothing to do with racism or biasness or anything. Blacks and Hispanics already have problems in Chicago because many Blacks believe that Hispanics are taking jobs that they feel that they should get. So, which means you bring them in here, they're going to start going after some jobs where they're not going to ask for what the city will demand because they get paid under the table in some cases, not all. So this is going to cause an issue. And I believe in this community. I also believe that it is not culturally comfortable for them when you have Bridgeport, Little Village, Pilsen, and other areas that might have abandoned schools and city facilities like some of those old sanitary districts and 39th Street right off Western, that humongous building where nobody's really using it anymore, except I think one little group of the city. I mean, I just think that there's other options. And this is not to say that I don't believe I heard anybody speak of prejudice, racism, or biasness tonight. And I've been listening from the beginning. Mostly they're concerned about the community and how we make this fit. And also, I just needed to say that we appreciate you guys on the dais, but also at the same time, the political system in Chicago, many of you all won't even be here a year or two from now. So any commitment you make, we have no memorandum of agreement, no memorandum of understanding, no kind of contract to say, how long is this program supposed to be here? What happens to the building when it's over? So the community is saying they refuse to accept that this is a done deal. That's what I heard tonight. And if the community doesn't agree to it, they don't want it done. And I think that's the bottom line, the wrap-up thing you have to take back downtown to City Hall, because this is what I'm hearing, and I'm sure everybody else is hearing here tonight.
That's been a common critique and concern about where folks are being placed. And I think if everyone up here had our choice, of course, we would put Spanish speakers in a predominantly Latino neighborhood so that they had access to resources, support systems. I think it was just a few weeks ago where DFSS sent an email to a lot of their delegate agencies asking for potential spaces. We have asked other people, we sent emails to other aldermen asking for potential spaces, and Matt and churches, thank you, and OEMC has received recommendations. They go and vet them, and then we find the pipes are bursted, the copper's taken, there's no congregate setting. Of course, we want to place folks where they feel comfortable, or folks can feel integrated. That would be the best approach, but this is an emergency situation. The buses are continuing to come, and we have to use the resources available and leverage what we have. And it makes folks uncomfortable, totally understand that. And there's going to be growing pains, and there might be missteps, believe it or not, from the city. But we have to be sure that we work together to reach a consensus so that folks that come here don't just end up on the street. Because if we're not creating shelter, that's what's going to happen. So I just wanted to clarify that, and we can take the next person.
Thank you. Sophia Kochmeyer. Sophia Kochmeyer, she on? So the next person is Estella Camino.
Hello. Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I just wanted to say I am a community navigator with the Restoration Project, and I was also at the mark, and I was translating for some of these folks, and I want to say that none of them I never felt in danger with them, and the way that they came in without shoes, without jackets in the cold. We're all human beings, and I feel like at one point of our lives we needed help, and I never expected all this negative comments, especially from like a community that helped us, people, I'm Mexican, so of a community that helped us be accepted. Like I feel like we should all help each other. And I still walk in a white neighborhood, and I feel like people stare at me differently. And I feel like if people that are coming with a harsh background and they're still willing to take a long walk, help them out, and think of them as a human beings.
Dwayne Bailey, please. Dwayne Bailey, can you hear me?
He's not on.
Okay, Lorena Lopez. Lorena Lopez. She's on. Hello, Ms. Lopez.
Lorena Lopez.
What did you say? Okay, going. Lupita Carmona. Lupita. Alma Sagala. Jawanda Harrison.
Hi, this is Jawanda Hairston. I just have to echo some questions that I felt have not been answered. And one of the big questions was about follow-up. So we keep hearing it's an emergency situation. I think some of us are unclear on what you consider an emergency situation, because it feels like this has been planned since at least October 24th and possibly September. And then with that understanding, we're meeting today and a possible, anticipated date of January 6th. How kind of communication are you going to have now that you see the reaction from the community, feeling as though there hasn't been enough transparency and communication? What changes are you going to be making to follow up with us to ensure that we have a better opportunity to engage and have some input into what's going to happen?
Again, Christine Riley from DFSS. I'll talk about our experience during COVID and what actually my responsibility and our division's responsibility was when we moved into Young Women's Leadership Academy for the first time during COVID. So we met with the aldermen, we met with the community, and I created weekly updates to the aldermen. Other aldermen wanted bi-weekly updates, but the aldermen at Young Women's Leadership Academy, and I'm just saying that as an example because it is a school, weekly updates about how many people were currently at the shelter, how many people received certain services, how many people participated in different activities, how many people, and I'm just giving an example, how many people would go to the mark, how many people went to the clinic. So every week, because the alderman wanted to share with their constituents what was going in the shelter, that's what took place. And from the time we opened at Young Women's Leadership Academy to the time we left, that happened. And again, in another ward, it was an alderman wanted bi-weekly update, and it was the same thing. So they got a clear understanding of what was going on, what services were provided. So I definitely know that we can do that as well.
I think that we're asking about just in terms of what's going to happen with the building between even now and January 6th. Is this our last conversation? Or are we going to wake up on January 6th and, we have some new community members and everything. We don't know if we have access to, the park, that type of, are we supposed to rely on Alderman Taylor for communication? Does she realize that she's the primary communicator? Like all that is what we want to know, as well as in terms of what's going to happen to the building. Is this short term? Is it long term? What might happen to the facility afterward? Because a lot of us were looking towards a community center and other things for that building. So now that there's been work done on it, what else might happen to that building?
One of the things that we've certainly been taking notes on is one of the requests for follow-up. So we know we want more information on timeline, the safety concerns, an exit strategy, community opportunities. Those are some of the main ones, and also if the campus will be accessible. So those are something that we can certainly will follow up with more robust information, whether it's a follow-up Zoom or more concrete written documents that goes to peruse. That's something we're certainly helpful and willing to share. I'm
sorry, some people said they can't hear you. I'm supposed to let you know, some of the Zoom people can't hear you.
About Wadsworth and whether or not that was going to be a space that was accessible or acceptable to use. And then literally that same week, the new Venezuelan program dropped. El Paso said they were going to stop sending buses, and there was a shift in Title 42. And because of those things, we were able to shift our focus to other priorities and not necessarily whether or not Wadsworth was going to continue. And so, thank you. So I want to emphasize again, this is the emergency because we're unsure of Title 42. We're unsure what's going to happen at the border. And so we don't want to necessarily do what happened in October, which is that we decided to focus on other things and now we're here. And so that's why it's an emergency, because we don't know when the next bus is coming. We continue to receive buses. We don't know what our shelter space is going to look like. And that's why we are so urgently needing to move on this. And I know that's not what folks want, not what we want to hear. And I think that is just the reality of this. And I know it's incredibly uncomfortable and disappointing and frustrating, especially because there's a history of distrust that goes back decades and decades about what this community wants. I think there's an ongoing conversation that we need to have and bring in DPD about your plans with Wadsworth and what's going to happen. What does it mean to update this building and what's going to happen to it in the future? This is absolutely an ongoing conversation, and we want to take your feedback today and come back to you. And I just, I don't know if anyone else has finished yet.
I think the question about the park is a fair question. The team will be going out with facilities management, and CPS. And so I think that walkthrough that they have will really make sure that we're able to make sure that whatever can be done to preserve community space is done. We do know that there will be a shower trailer. And so I think that when you all go out, it's just helpful to look at that, because that's a fair point of them being able to access the park fitness facilities. When are you going to walk through? When will you be doing the walkthrough? When will you do the walkthrough and when is the follow up? They're scheduled to walk through by the end of the week. The end of this week. Will you guys be informed the alderman? Yes, we will be informed of all. And will some of the community stakeholders be able to walk through this? I think that's a question we can take back. We don't typically do community stakeholders in the walkthrough, but we can talk to all.
So there are a lot of things in that campus that you just might not know because you're seeing it the first time, but this literally might not be.
I can't hear the speaker.
This is not the first time. What I said earlier is that we don't know the capacity. We haven't done a final walkthrough yet. But so we've been in the building to see how, when it was in like disarray and looking at it, but we don't know the capacity. We haven't done a final walkthrough.
That's not what I'm saying.
I think what she's saying is there's things that she knows because she lives there that she would like to share. And I think that's fair.
The campus.
Right. How about we exchange email addresses so that you can share that with my team after this?
Yeah. Clarify there. I think Kristen's gonna put it on the last slide. There's an email address, folks. Oh, a second. That folks can use if they have other follow-up questions or things they'd like to share.
The people on the phone cannot clearly hear the conversation.
Erica Ayala.
Email that's Office of New Americans at City of Chicago, please add .org at the end, or else your email will be undeliverable. It's at cityofchicago.org, please.
We'll follow up with all the attendees, which will follow up information and
Devon Clark. Amy Battle. That's a lot. So they're all gone. So I just want to thank everybody for attending. I know that we addressed some of your concerns. We will be contacting with the commissioner and the people on the panel today. And I just want to thank you, Alderman Taylor, for bringing us together.
Point of clarification. End of this week, tomorrow is Thursday. Friday will be Saturday. Is it one of those days?
The walkthrough is scheduled by the end of the week. I don't have the exact date that the teams will be going. In order to make preparations to open next week, but there's a lot of work that goes into contractors, supplies, resources, and ordering.
So I first want to say thank you all for staying. I know we said 8 o'clock. It's almost 9 o'clock. I appreciate the conversation, but let me say this for the record. I was not informed at any time that this would be happening in the morning. So I want to make that perfectly clear. Clearly, we just had a budget meeting that Commissioner Kanazi was in, and this was not, we asked questions about it. I was not pulled to the side to say, hey, we're thinking about Wadsworth, we should do Wadsworth. I was never informed. This new conversation that's starting,
I got a call last week from the mayor, saying you're rethinking about Wadsworth. And I said to her, you need to have a conversation with the community. You can't just impose something on us. You have to be a part of those conversations. Let me say that first and foremost. Second of all, the 20th ward is a Black and brown community. And so when they were talking about immigrants before from Venezuela, what made sense is for them to go into the Latinx community, because they have plenty of organizations there that can help them. They speak Spanish. They wouldn't be lost. The conversation they ain't talking about is what's happening to the immigrants that's in the fourth ward. They're honestly getting their ass. And I'm not gonna clear it up for nobody. I'm not gonna be PG. That's what's happening. So that's not even the conversation that we're having. So this is about safety for everybody. And my question to y'all is, y'all spent $1.1 billion on Wadsworth. We can't get y'all to help us fix the houses. We got houses that are sinking in the water. We're going through some gentrification, and so the thought that you will pick the community that's going through the most says a lot about this administration. And this is and I tell y'all all the time, my fuss ain't to y'all, because y'all answer to a boss. Y'all not making a decision. And so for me, this can't happen January 6th, and I'm gonna say that publicly. This cannot happen under no shape or form. And if my community is out there protesting, I'm gonna be out there with them, because y'all wrong. Y'all had an opportunity to ask all 50 aldermen, are there spaces in the ward that we can fit folks, and you didn't do that. And we will be. And y'all cherry picked who y'all asked and who y'all went. And if you look at the majority of those communities where they are, on the south side, let's not play like we don't know the 4th and the 9th ward. And so this is wrong on all levels, and it shouldn't be imposed. You all are gonna get another tax meeting. Ain't no telling how we can be. So people who pay taxes have the right to decide the institutions that serve them. And I just hope that y'all know I'm fighting with y'all. And this ain't this Black and brown thing. Let's stop that right now. Because them going into the Latinx community, having those conversations with those organizations, they came up with spaces to say, can they go here and go there? And to the commissioner's point, they couldn't go in one of the spaces because of that. But you spent $1.1 million. I'll go back to that. $1.1 million inside of Wadsworth. Well, we couldn't get y'all to cut the grass. And this is not the city, this is CPS. I'll talk to you plenty of times. We couldn't get them to do anything. But now all of a sudden you're talking about bringing people here. And let's not make this mistake. Y'all don't take care of the people that already live here. We got people who sleep on Roosevelt and Taylor every day. And the only people that I see are the community organizations, the young lady Inglewood Bar. Commissioner Kanazi, I'm not gonna put you out of this, because there was a lady that lived on 63rd and Everhart that you helped her find her family and made sure she's okay. So this is not only, this is a bigger issue, but we love taking care of everybody, but the people who actually live in the city. And that's where you hear the frustration from the community and me. I text the mayor while I'm sitting here and say that January 6th date does not happen. I'm gonna tell y'all something, it's an election year. It's an election year, like I can know everybody else can. Listen to the people who listen to you. Listen to the people who stand up and fight for you. And this has been hard. It ain't been easy, because just like y'all, they doing what? I wasn't informed, CPS didn't call me, neither did the city. And I'm an elected official. You pay my check just like you pay theirs. And I wasn't even worth the conversation. So what you think they think about y'all? Y'all can show February 28th is coming up real soon. And we don't have to just take a stand together. While we disagree on a lot of things, this is one of the things that we're agreeing upon, because we don't know what's going to happen. They don't know who's coming off them buses. That's what they told me. But now it's a whole different story. They told us 500 people will be in Wadsworth, 250 men, 250 women. And this ain't about just safety for them, it's safety for everybody. And so y'all got my number. Y'all know how to get in contact with me. I'm gonna fight this fight with you. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming.
Thanks to everyone who joined via Zoom. We're gonna end the meeting now, but we'll be sure to record everything that was added in the chat as well.
But is it being shared?